right into it.
I guess we can dive in and then we'll keep the last segment as our Q&A, and then we'll get
I'm
all
sure
of
there's
those
going to be
questions.
a lot of questions there, so we don't want to hang you until 12 midnight. So at that time, like you may finish the information session, and then they can stay until midnight if they still have another questions for you.
They always have my number too. I'll make sure that everyone has my phone number. So my name is Kayla Andrade. I've been a landlord since the age of 18. I have 4 children, 18, 13, 9, and 2. When you actually have to look up, you know that you have a lot of children and trying to figure out how old they are. I started getting into real estate investing in Brantford, and that's when we bought ourselves a semi while we rented in Cambridge. And then we found ourselves a semi detached home that we bought and that we lived in for quite some time, approximately 4 years. And then we sold our property in Brantford and got ourselves a 5-plex. So we kind of kept playing musical chairs with our properties. So from all together, we now have 18 units, from 5-plexes, duplexes, triplexes. So it's always been a battle, just trying to get through that hurdle of trying to find the funding, get your deposits. So that's not the part that I'm always hammering home to our landlords. Ours is always going to be about the concept of getting to know the Residential Tenancies Act, getting to know the Landlord and Tenant Board. And before you get to know all of that stuff, you also got to really dive deep into your tenant screening. So for us, and with the reason why I got into advocacy is because when we had our 5-plex, the city of Cambridge started making landlords responsible for the tenants' delinquent utility bills. I knew that was definitely, that's taking away some cash flow from my rental unit if my tenants decide to not pay their rent on time. And this is why I knew that I tried to do whatever I could to advocate at the municipal level to try to stop this municipal policy from coming in. We fought it back and forth like for 4 years. We had a petition, we had protest. The petition went around all the way around Ontario for support, because if it was happening in Cambridge, it's happening in other cities. And it's currently happening now in Barrie, where they now are trying to put landlords on the hook for the tenants' delinquent utility bills. Trying to educate our elected officials, informing them of how catastrophic it is, not for the landlords, but also for the tenants, because what's going to happen is that there's now going to be a rent increase to cover those type of delinquencies that could be left by the tenant. And 2, a lot of landlords are going to look at the tenants' profits of how much income they have coming in, and just knowing that, it's a big family, there's a good chance that you're going to have a huge water bill. So we're trying to really educate our elected officials about what the landlords are doing in order for them to create better policies that do work for good landlords, good tenants, and including the taxpayers. So when we get into tenant screening, it's not to scare you. A lot of landlords, when they call me, they're going to be talking about different problems that they have with their tenants. You ask them, did you do a credit check? And they're like, no. They're like, well, what kind of red flags were they giving you before they came in to look at your rental unit? So one, it's like offering, more money up front. Sometimes they just say, I need it quickly. They talk bad about their previous landlord. So we really need to make sure that the tenant screening is going to be your number one key to making sure that you have that successful tenancy. So now for me, I'll give you guys a little bit of brief of what I do for my tenants. So one, you're going to get yourself your rental ad. Inside of your rental ad, never describe the type of tenant that you're looking for. We have to be very cautious that it's not going to go through any issue with human rights. So you have to make sure that when you're putting your rental ad in place, always make sure that you're describing the unit to the type of tenant that you wish to attract. So you're not going to be like, oh, it's great for students, or hey, it's great for single families or like single individuals. You really want to just really highlight what your unit has to offer. And that's what's going to really open the door. The other side of your rental ad is always putting down that you require first and last month's rent, that you do a credit check and a background check. And now we'll get into a little bit later about reporting the tenant's monthly payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax monthly. And this is now going to help you divert away from professional tenants who have burnt so many landlords who probably do have bad credit. They just try to make sure that, hey, is this landlord going to do their credit checks? Because if not, this is how I want to get in. And that's usually how these professional tenants come in. They pay first and last month's rent, or they pay 3 months rent cash, and then they stop paying the type of rental units. Once we get them into the rental ad, you always want to make sure that you're in doing the tour with the tenants. Never just give it to someone just because they're out of town. You really want to make sure that the person that you are going to be renting to is seeing the unit and making sure that it's in clean, it's showing well. This is going to help you attract the right type of tenant to your rental unit. And then you have the other concept of when you are in the rental unit and you're screening these type of tenants, you have to just be very casual. Don't be like a business where you're having an interview with the people. It's very direct to your comments. It's almost like you're just there to show the place. And then you'd be like, so is this here for yourself? Oh, tell me, why are you moving? And then you start talking about you. Like I tell my potential tenants, I said, oh, I forgot to let Fluffy out. And they're like, oh, who's Fluffy? I'm like, oh, my dog. I'm like, oh my God, I have a dog too. I'm like, oh, do you want to see mine? And I show them, I don't have a dog. I got Fluffy off the internet, but guess what? Those tenants now just told me they have a dog. So same thing with like smoking. They're like, oh, I'm just so struggling to quit smoking. It's driving me nuts. And they're like, yeah, me too. Right. And they're now giving you information based on the information that's coming out of you. So honestly, you have to be an actor. We're not trying to pretend to these tenants, but when you are giving them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth in one rental unit, when you hand over that key, that's it. This is now going to be their home, and that could be their home. And I don't mean to scare you, but it could be 11 months or even more to how this tenant can stay in this rental unit rent free. So when you have a tenant and they're in your rental units, you have to run that as a business. You have to make sure that you're giving the proper information to the tenants from their lease, outline everything in your lease and your addendums. Make sure that all the communication with your tenant is always in writing, document. This is going to really help you if you ever have to go to the landlord and tenant board. When your tenant doesn't pay rent, you always want to make sure that you're giving that N4 on the 2nd of every month. Be open with your tenant, work out a payment arrangement. And when you give them this N4 application for non-payment of rent, or just saying, listen, I'm sorry I have to give this to you. It's just the rules and the regulations that I have to follow. I know you're going to pay me on Friday, but I have to give you this N4 application. This N4 application is it's the ball that's got to get started in order for you to wait 14 days before you can even file that application at the landlord and tenant board. Now, if you have a tenant who you give them the N4, they pay you before your L1 application or even after, but you're starting to see that this is becoming a pattern, you can actually file to the board to evict your tenant based on the persistently of being late. Now, is the adjudicator going to grant this? Possibly not on the first try, but what they will do would put a section, I think it's 74, don't quote me, I'm not a paralegal, but there's a section in there where the tenant, if they do agree to a payment arrangement or a payment plan, is that they can't be a penny late or a day late. Because if they are, then that's when the landlord can apply to the board without the tenant's knowledge to evict them. So that would be the N8 application. So that's why it's really important for us to always exercise that N4, because it could lead into needing it as proof for your N8. And also it sets that precedence to your tenants that you don't tolerate any type of late payments. We could talk about a property, here's the rent, here's the property taxes, here's the insurance, here's the maintenance, but unless you're managing that unit properly and you don't do it well, that's going to now eat up the cash flow that you could potentially be making on there by doing not having proper management of the rental unit. So always making sure that your paperwork is filled out perfectly. A lot of landlords, when they're filling out their N4 application, it's literally they forgot a unit number, they forgot a room number, they forgot to sign it, they forgot to they're off 5 cents. We've seen a landlord's application being thrown out because of 1 cent. Sorry, 5 cents. 5 cents. So that is what is very crucial in getting to know the landlord and tenant board and the forms and the applications and how to serve it. Many landlords will send their applications to the tenant by email. and thinking that's our way of communicating. This is what it's stated on the application or on the lease, is that our way of communicating is going to be through email, but your papers for your applications, they actually have to go into by mail. It's going to be delivered, or it has to be through expedited mailing service, which you add on an extra 5 days. So there's going to be lots to talk about when it comes down to like all these different type of landlord and tenant board forms, especially if you want to move into the unit yourself. But you have to make sure that it's very question everything that you're going to send to your tenant, because they can hold that against you now at the landlord and tenant board. So especially if you have a tenant that you're now going to take to the landlord and tenant board, you want to make sure all your maintenance is up to snuff. No issues there. If you do have an issue with maintenance, the tenants can bring that evidence to the board 7 days prior to the hearing. This might influence the adjudicator to be like, okay, we're going to give money back on the rent, or they're going to put the tenant on a monthly payment plan just because you did have some type of maintenance issues. So we really want to make sure that your maintenance on all your properties are really good. Now for the concept of tenant screening, dealing with the landlord and tenant board, definitely dealing with tenants who are ruining the enjoyment of others. We really need to make sure that you don't let it go for a long periods of time. Some people would wait, and you really want to make sure you're acting on that, documenting it, sending them the N5 notice, because they have 7 days to correct their behavior before you can be able to try to apply to the board to being able to evict them. Now, this is where I'll get into the advocacy side of things. I'm not going to lie to you. The landlord and tenant board is broken. It's completely, they work themselves into a portal. We take part in their stakeholder meetings where they're trying to allow landlords to now bring previous tenants to the landlord and tenant board, but you actually have to track them down at their current address in order to serve them the landlord and tenant board forms. And if you don't have their current address, you have a different alternative method of which way you want to serve that type of tenant. You actually have to show them proof why you think that is going to get to them. So it's not a really good system of what the landlord and tenant board's doing. And that's what Ontario Landlords Watch has been doing, is really highlighting the issues at the landlord and tenant board and recommending solutions to deal with the backlog. Just off the top of our head, like the one thing that we want to do is remove a non-payment of rent from being heard by an adjudicator. Right now, it's an automatic, you can, you're going to the landlord and tenant board in order for me to get my eviction. We want to kind of remove that from being heard by an adjudicator to alleviate the backlog, because that's about 80% of the applications at the landlord and tenant board is for non-payment of rent. So we need to try to alleviate that as much as we possibly can. This is where, when we look at what the landlord and tenant board's doing, and it does scare a lot of landlords, especially when you need that rental income to come in, but they had no alternative, nothing else to do. So what they have been able to try to do was doing something that's illegal, that's going to get them in trouble. So if you're caught doing an unlawful eviction, that's going to be $50,000 for an individual and $250,000 for a corporation. So really our hands are tied. And that's why I became the ambassador to FrontLobby and Landlord Credit Bureau, is a way for landlords to really change the way that the behavior of tenants. This is going to be a way for landlords to report their current monthly payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau. You do not need tenant's consent or a judgment to report the tenant's monthly payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax. The only time you need the tenant's consent to report the tenant's to the credit bureaus is if you're reporting a good payment history. So if you want to help your tenants build and improve their credit, then they can give consent through the platform. And if you want to report a debt on a current tenant or a former tenant, you do not need their consent or a judgment. And this is now going to get onto the tenant's credit history. This is now going to be put on the tenant's credit history as a trade line. And now what's going to happen is, now as other landlords are doing their credit checks, they're now going to be informed of that tenant's debt. It's going to make it harder for them to seek accommodations. It's going to encourage them to want to pay that debt to you because it's obviously affecting their ways of getting accommodation. And at the other side of it, sometimes we have landlords like, they don't care. they have bad credit. Why do they care? It's about informing the other landlords, trying to make sure that the landlords are able to be notified of that in particular tenant. And at the same time, it's now a bonus. So when you're advertising your rental unit for these potential tenants, you can say, hey, I'm actually going to help you build your credit by renting my unit. So this is now going to be more of an enticing factor for your tenants to want to come and rent off of you as well. The only way you can report damages to FrontLobby is if you have a judgment. So you do have to get a judgment for damages, just because damages can vary. And with the Landlord and Tenant Board, they want to see multiple quotes from the damage in order to make their decision on what they're going to put on the order. And that's why an order is required to report that debt to the credit bureaus. And again, for the monthly payment history of good tenants, they absolutely love it. Their score has been going up. It really encourages them to pay on time. And this is where it's going to help tenants, to help landlords make sure that you're getting that cash flow, because the tenants have something to gain by having the tenants be able to report their monthly payment history. So we see everything that's happening with the Landlord and Tenant Board. It's a lot of communication that we need from our community to reach out to their local MPP, to reach out to the Minister of Housing, to the Attorney General who oversees the Landlord and Tenant Board. And we need to be able to say that we are good landlords. The government needs us. If you talk to any elected official right now when it comes to housing, they talk about how they need to reach out to the private landlords in order for them to create this much needed supply, and they need to work with us. So right now the ball is in, I would say, our court, because the rents are rising. We have the ability to grow the supply, but we're telling them we need more protection and we need a better housing system in order for us to be able to help and do whatever we can to make sure that we can be a part of the overall solution in creating affordability. Because right now we have encampments in the region of Waterloo that are considered now to be a form of housing, and it's now going to be ran by the region of Waterloo as an encampment. These are tents that have been pitched in a parking lot where people are now living. They have porta potties, they have 24-hour security. This is what our housing crisis has come. And as taxpayers, we should be worried, because we're paying for this type of expense. And taxpayers are paying $3,000 a month to house one person in emergency shelters, such as motels. So we really come to our elected officials as a team to say, we're here to represent good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. And we need to know that there is a better solution out there to really help us thrive, to keep creating that supply. But what we're seeing in Ontario is that we have our investors skipping out and getting into Alberta. They're investing into Florida. They're investing into Costa Rica. They're starting to utilize their money elsewhere. And so we want to know that Ontario is still great. It's still a great place to be, but we just need to change the laws in order to protect the landlords against these tenants who want to abuse the system. But if you're doing all your bells and your whistles and your checks and do not let anybody in, it's best to keep your unit empty for a month than it is to do a rush decision and let the wrong person in, because it can cost you very, very heavily. And always keeping yourself into a property management platform, something where you can keep that dialogue with your tenants, just to show that you're doing your part in being a good landlord. And just to let you guys know that based on the advocacy efforts and the education, it's going to be based on situations that you guys have. I can give you more advice on, such as a landlord that I just had today with his tenants eating bricks. So if you have any crazy situations like that, I can give you some tidbits on it. But I do want to invite all of you to the Ontario Landlords Watch Conference that we're going to be holding in Cambridge, Ontario on October 1st. And this is where we are going to talk about the top 5 issues of the Landlord and Tenant Board and the top 5 solutions with a think tank. We're going to be really including our audience as well as a panel in this discussion. We're going to be talking about the issues of the RTA and the solutions to those issues that are affecting the RTA, such as our rent increases. We're not happy with the 2.5% max that we're allowed to raise our rents by, especially when utilities have increased for gas at 23%. And then we have municipal bylaws and policies. So short-term rental licensing, landlord licensing. We have water billing, the zoning bylaws and changes and permits and parking, you name it. There's a lot of government involvement at the municipal level that's really affecting our industry, and we need need to be able to speak up and tell them what needs to get changed and why it's going to be good for the community and why it's going to be good for tenants. And then we're going to be talking about government programs. So there's government housing and government programs. We're going to talk about the inefficiencies within the government programs regarding that there's a 10-year waiting list in Cambridge for government housing, and it's a 22-year waiting list in Mississauga for government housing. But they do have government programs. Some are where you really want to read the fine print to it. Sometimes they guarantee the rent, they guarantee the damages, and they also provide a mediator just in case the communication breaks down. And they also provide incentives. So if you wanted to create a secondary suite, there's some funding that's there through the region that's going to help people be able to create that supply. But there's some holes that we're going to poke at, just because a lot of landlords rather take their money from a loan shark than take it from the region. And then we're going to talk about rent release. So as a tenant is not paying rent, as a landlord, we're going to educate you on what kind of rent relief programs are out there for the tenants, so that you can show proof to the adjudicator that you're trying to accommodate your tenant and giving them access to different relief programs in order to help them stay in the unit. If they don't do it, then it's going to obviously look bad on them, and you're looking a lot better. We have our tenant screening discussion with Sarah Larby. She's going to be coming, and we have Samantha Glass is going to teach you how to represent yourself at the landlord and tenant board and give you the most common mistakes that landlords make. And then we're going to have the founder of FrontLobby flying in all the way from Vancouver. He's going to be talking about the details of rent reporting, debt reporting, and credit checks. And you're going to be able to ask him some questions. And then we have a property management software that we're going to, for the do-it-yourself landlords, stuff to keep you really organized. Organization is definitely the key in making sure that you are brand new and shiny coming into any court appearance that you would have to do. And we have a dinner. So we have the choice between potatoes, veggies, and chicken. And then we have fish, rice, and salad. We have some appetizers and our conference cake. And we have some prizes and games. We're having it a theme as The Price is Right. If anyone knows The Price is Right. So we're doing The Price Could Be Right, making it almost like a wedding. We even have centerpieces. So it's definitely going to be a fun evening to learn about all the information that you need to know. But at the same time, be able to network with your real estate community, because we are much stronger together in order to create that fair and balanced housing system for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. I know we only had a little bit of time, but I hope you guys got something out of that spiel that I said to you guys. But if you have any type of questions, or if you have a situation that you're currently experiencing, or what you had experienced, and you want to know my thought process on how to handle it, fire away.
That's quite of an information, and that's a lot to take, and we
I think you
appreciate.
recorded it.
Yes, yeah, we appreciate all the information, but I just wanted to ask you for a very basic, and we have, like, as Jenny mentioned, we have new landlords. So I think what those new landlords are, they do all their self, they do research of whatnot, what type of form. But is there such thing as like a quick and easy tool that they can go to a website that it just summarizes everything there? Because looking at all of those end forms, it's pretty overwhelming. So is there like a basic information that I can just go here and then just a high level that just helping them, because it's very overwhelming to be in this industry, right? But it's just for the newbies.
Yep, the Landlord and Tenant Board had created Navigate Tribunals Ontario. So this is going to be like that guide. So you'll have like, I am the landlord, this is my situation. So they'll have some options for you to check off. Say my tenant's not paying rent. Then after you click that, it's going to tell you what form to be looking at. So that is a very good thing that I think the Landlord and Tenant Board had created, was Navigate Tribunals. But if that fails and it's still a little complicated for you, which it's the Landlord and Tenant Board, it might be, jump over into the group. I put the link there for Ontario Landlords Watch. Tell us your situation. The landlords, there's 6,900 members of us in there with 3,200 members waiting to come in. Put your situation there. The members are going to be more than willing to jump in and give you some guidance on what form to follow and what to look out for and what errors you want to avoid. And if you are joining into the group, just make sure that you're telling me what group you're coming from so I can let you in quicker, just so that, like I said, we have that waiting list, and I want to make sure that we get you all in tonight.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, so we'll open the chair now for questions. And if you'd like me to read your question, or you can just unmute yourself, guys, and ask Kayla, feel free to do so. But first, I think we have a first question here from Jonas and Karen. Can you go through a typical eviction process? How long is the wait to get our case heard at the LTB?
So when you give your N4 notice on the 2nd, you can't give it on the 1st of the month, then you have to wait 14 days. Waiting from that 14 days, then you file your L1 application at the Landlord and Tenant Board. They will eventually, because we don't know the time, because like I said, they're broken, they'll put you in this portal. So this portal is where you're going to create your own special login, and then all your information is going to be able to be uploaded within that portal. Technically, you're supposed to be there for 2 weeks before you even get put in the schedule to have your hearing. So currently in Ontario, we are looking at an eviction process of 7 to 11 months right now. All depends on where you're going to be located. So we're normally with ideally, they're supposed to, with between 60 days of having your a hearing scheduled for you. So 14 days, then you have to file. You're waiting about that 2 months mark. It's a lot longer. And then once you're in the hearing, and let's say that you get an order from the judge for an eviction, you have to wait until that order comes to you, stamped, usually by email. It's going to come to you. And then based on that stamp, you have to wait 11 days before you can file for the sheriff. And the sheriff, from the last thing I heard, was approximately 3 to 4 weeks for the sheriff. So we have to see that it's going to be all, and then let's say that you have your paperwork, your order, and then you go into the sheriff's office to pay them and for them to come. The tenants can apply to the board to put a stay on that eviction. So if they didn't show up to the hearing, if they said they had a payment plan and they gave you money, but they're still trying to evict you, they can use any excuse possible to prevent the sheriff from coming, and forces the Landlord and Tenant Board to schedule another hearing. In Alberta, it's a lot nicer. I'll have more of a time frame I can give you, but you got to go through those steps.
All right, thanks, Kayla. I think I just have a follow-up question on that. So if all is all said and done, we get a sheriff with that 11 months of a non-payment. Is there a chance to recoup those losses, or what's the step on that?
The only way for that is, one, you're going to be able to get it into the credit, encourage the tenant to pay it. You can start to use it as a collection agency, where they usually take 35 to 40% of whatever they collect. And that's usually the tenants want to pay because it's affected their credit, not because of the harassing phone calls. And the other concept is that garnishment. Garnishment is very difficult because you need to be able to serve the tenant at their current address to make sure that they've been served, and they have to have wages that are garnishable. So if anybody's on OW or ODSP, those or fixed income for that matter, it's unable to be garnished. So you're not going to be able to retrieve any money from someone who's on fixed income.
I see. That's a very good point. Yeah. So it's just no matter what, like you can't really. There's a process to get through it. You cannot just like take their furnitures out and take it. So.
I had my landlords remove doors. I had that.
Yeah.
I'm like, put the door back. You gotta put the door back.
That's right. Any more questions from the group?
I can do one, Dennis.
Yeah, Sir Tom.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Kayla. Thanks for this time. Just a quick question for your properties or maybe some other landlords that you have dealt with. what kind of software are you using to manage the properties?
So the software, it's going to be different from based on what you want it to do. I'm liking the rental gauge platform, but this is where a lot of landlords now, we're still on that Excel, the Excel, your spreadsheets, the paper. And sometimes when you go into property management software, it's also about being able to utilize that data entry of the rent payments, but you're also being able to utilize it for your N4 applications. So it actually helps you avoid putting errors into the N4 application because you're able to use the rental gauge platform in order to avoid making those type of mistakes. And everyone knows Buildium and Yardi.
Yeah.
I heard very negative about Yardi. Buildium, I just found it was a little bit too pricey. But yeah, it's not crucial. Obviously sometimes when you look at your cash flow, can you afford it? Yes, great. If not, if you can manage it with having your computer files, having a backup paper file, and making sure that you have that timer every 6 months to make sure you're being reminded to go in and do your smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector checks. That's very important for our landlords to make sure that they're doing their safety checks, just in case anything happens.
Thank you.
Kayla?
Okay, something good. We're still hunting it down.
Yeah, I just have a question with regards. Would you be able to demo just like probably like a minute for the FrontLobby? So just in case they wanted to register, I know there's a demo as well for that.
I don't have a demo. The only thing that I could do, I can get the vice president to do a demo with you. I just have my personal account, and based on the privacy laws, I'm not going to be able to show you what's going on there.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Especially when this call is being recorded.
Is there a website that they can, or a YouTube about the FrontLobby? Just a quick tool.
Best yet,
Yeah.
if you have with FrontLobby, there's you can sign up for a premium membership for $199, or you can sign up for a free basic membership. And that free basic membership, you can get in, see how it works, see the samples of everything. So it's going to give you that firsthand experience, and it's free to join in as a free basic member. So that's the perks to it. I'll send you that website right now. Now, if you want to get yourself into the premium membership, let's say you want to jump right into it, where you can get your $9.99 credit checks, and the $9.99 credit checks also give you the tenancy records from Landlord Credit Bureau. So if another landlord had reported that in particular tenant, you're now going to be able to see their payment history through the tenancy record that comes with the credit check. And the scoring is also included and very easy to read. So if you use OLW 15, that's going to give you the $15 credit. So you can utilize that for a free credit check if you want to be able to jump in and start doing a credit check just to see what that is. But there is a sample that's there. And I have so many windows open. I got so many monitors. When you have like elected officials on every angle, you can only imagine what I have to do on here. And then here is the event page that I have created on the website. So if anyone's interested in the conference that we're hosting, definitely it's going to be a wealth of knowledge, more than what I am right now. Normally you're like, you're on the clock and you're trying to spit out as much information as possible. Here we have that slow breakdown of what these issues are, and understanding the issue is going to be able to prepare you not to make any type of errors within your rental industry, and making sure that we're supporting the advocacy efforts that we need. Because when media calls me and they're talking about the rent increases that are happening, he's telling me that he's talking to elected officials, and the elected officials are saying that they're trying to find a way to implement full rent control in between tenancies. So that is going to be absolutely brutal. I can't see it happening underneath the conservative government, but like I said, we have a growing encampment and a growing housing crisis. I feel that they're going to feel pressured to do it. So we really need to make sure that we become a very connected voice.
Well, your leadership has come a long way already, Kayla, and I think with this information drive that you're doing, right? It's gonna just help more spread the advocacy that you're trying to push here. So we appreciate that. So,
you're welcome.
any more questions Mr. Juan Bernal, do you have a question? You're on mute, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
No, yeah. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you. Thank you for the very much information. The way I'm seeing it right now, the province has all the protection, has all the armor for the tenant. And what's on the what is on the landlord that that you cannot evict and you can right away, like obviously the taking I mean with all your rent, and if you're not having a rent, so it is a negative cash flow on you. I'm just wondering how could they expedite, if the guy, if the tenant is a professional how what's the right word there? Professional
Scam artist.
scan artist, and how could I be expedite? That is that's my question in my mind right now. That's I myself new to this investment portfolio. I do have my rental my house before, but I stopped it because I see a lot of issues dealing with them upfront, and that's the other question in my mind. Was it advisable to do it yourself, or hire up property management, so all this headache will be a cushion for yourself, because you may be doing you may be employed, and at the same time you can't focus on all those issues, especially the government are more favors tenant than the landlord who put up some more money, put some investment to have some income for yourself on the side. So I think it's not really a question, but just maybe an advice recommendation.
No, you got it right on. It's like the government is using small landlords as a social agency with no compensation. It's really hard to get an expedited order at the Landlord and Tenant Board based on a repeat offender who is doing this and caught doing this. We're hoping to change the way that the criminal law actually, if you have someone who stole, $30,000 from some type of business, they would be in the newspaper. They would be criminally charged. But people are getting away with $50,000 in rent arrears. This is where something needs to be held. The tenants need to be held accountable. And we need to show our elected officials that if you keep putting these type of restrictions onto landlords, what's going to happen is that they're going to find different ways to invest their money, such as precious metals. They're going to go into the stocks. They're going to go into other provinces. And now they're going to sell their current rental to maybe a buyer who actually wants to move into it for their own personal use. And now you're removing a rental unit from the stock market. And that's what they see after COVID, especially when the landlords were told that you can't evict a tenant because everything was shut down. And then they said there's no rent increases for this year. There's a lot of landlords that did expedite their exit strategy and started getting into other provinces and other states in order to get that cash flow with more friendlier landlord rules and regulations. And they always do it because it's very political suicide for our elected officials to do something in the favor of the landlord, because the tenant activists, who are always funded by the government, always advertised by the elected officials at the municipal level, they look like they're doing something for the housing industry. So they really want to keep them close, not understanding that small landlords, we contribute to 70% of the housing stock. So it's not the REITs, it's not the corporate, this is small landlords. So if you see more and more small landlords coming together and almost telling each other, like, this is our screening process, we have to tighten our screening process. There's no buckling. Do not skip the credit check. Make sure you're doing the rent reporting, the debt reporting, and make sure that these tenants have a credit check of, X amount of 650 or more before you even let them into your rental unit. This is what we have to do because the risks are now so great.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Okay, another question here. Any tips or any advice if you want to lease your property to a group of international students?
One, want to make sure that they have, a credit. If they don't have good credit, then you can also, the tenants usually tend to offer a guarantor, and that's something that you can also report to FrontLobby. You can report the rental payment on the guarantor. So it's another backfall. I would put all of them on one lease so that you're not having an influx of different tenants leaving each room. And now you have a difficulty renting each room to someone different, and maybe the other group members don't want to do it. And making sure that you have a lot of your ground and house rules together, and making sure that you're doing more routine inspections for the rental unit, just to make sure that the unit is being in well kept, and just knowing that you're usually picking people who are friends with each other. They tend to live well and there's no disputes.
Thank you. Another question in my mind is that if you're not going through an LTB for eviction, what are any other options, strategies that you can do before you file for any inform or eviction? Is there anything that you can do prior?
Yeah, well, you got your one. It's going to be it's the mediation. It's the breakdown with the tenant to say, listen, this is going to happen in two different ways. One, you can pay me rent. We can work out this payment plan. And if you don't, I'm going to bring you to the Landlord and Tenant Board. It's going to become proper public knowledge on CanLII. So if anyone's looking on the CanLII website, they can search your name. It's really difficult, but they can still find your name. It's going to be public record. Now, I don't want to do that. So let's work out this payment plan. Let's try to do it. Now, on the other hand, let's say that you don't even care if this tenant pays, you really want them out. One of the tricks that we used to use as a once in a lifetime situation has now become very normal and very well educated to the tenants, where we would offer the tenants cash for keys. And this was where you give them money to leave the property. We hated doing it. We didn't want to do it, but it was a better way of doing it. Now tenants are actually trying to extort the landlords, becoming a problem and saying, hey, give me $20,000 and I'll leave the house so you can sell it, right? So, and the tenants are in the tenant groups going, hey, I want to get cash for keys. How do I negotiate this with my landlord? And it's like, whoa, like what's going on here? And some of our landlords, like, we got to be hard now and be like, I'd rather lose every penny, affect your credit, and bring you to the Landlord and Tenant Board before I'm going to give you a single dollar for holding my property hostage. That's not cool. So it's not much that we can do. It's always going to be about how you're approaching it. You're going to handle it in a very customer service way of how you talk to them. I always encourage our landlords to have a good cop and a bad cop. Obviously, I'm the bad cop. My husband's the good cop. So when I get to come in there, I tell him what to say. And when they don't listen, then I got to step in, and I'm now the one with the paperwork. I'm telling them what's going to happen. I'm laying down the law. And then sometimes just by doing that, changing the behavior of the tenant right away, and we don't have any further issues because they were new. They wanted to see how we would react. We reacted in that professional way, and they knew that it didn't have a bed to stand on.
That's great. Okay, any let's pick here.
I do have a question.
Yes, Ted, go ahead.
This is that. Let me open my camera. Hang on. Oh, problem. Anyway, yeah, I do have a question about like the student rental. So what if you have, or there's a student who kind of break things whenever he gets drunk. So let's say it's the second time around. It's not something that you can bring to the board.
What is he breaking?
Just any stuff, I guess, the doorknobs or lights.
Well, one, you want to do an N5 application for that one. So that's ruining the enjoyment of others. The stronger your case will be is being able to get something written from the other students in the facility to say that this is what's happening and that it's ruining their enjoyment. And it will even be a stronger case if those other roommates are able to attend the hearing. But ideally with the N5, they have 7 days to correct their behavior. And they also have to accommodate with what the cost would be to replace those things. So if they don't do that, then you have grounds now to bring them to the Landlord and Tenant Board to evict them.
Okay, got it. Thanks so much. I do have another question. It's okay. Earlier you mentioned that I think maintenance is kind of key. So what if you have an issue with a tenant, and then you're waiting for the hearing, and then like a few days before the hearing, something broke? Will that be taken against the landlord?
No, all you have to do is, let's say there's a couple of days before the hearing, they talk about something breaking, reply back to that tenants that thank you for your maintenance request. We will schedule your 24-hour notice, or we'll be over on Friday. You just have to show your means of trying to accommodate that maintenance request.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
Okay, any more questions?
I got 5 minutes before the kids are barging in. They just got back from Sky Zone. I stayed with you guys instead of going to Sky Zone. I can't do Sky Zone with after 4 kids.
Thank you, Kayla. All right. Yeah, so just calling one.
I have one last question.
Okay. So Elvis, go ahead.
Yes, hi Kayla. Good afternoon. Thank you for sharing your lots of information tonight. Anyway, my
It's an
question:
overload.
if there's a tenant who just left a lot of damages to the property, how do you go after them?
So one, that's going to be a skip tracing situation where you want to try to find out where their current address it will be. If that's the case, then you can if you find their current address, you can do an L10 application. Now, there's lots of Facebook groups going on right now. You can always try to say, hey guys, looking for these tenants. Do you guys know where I can find them? But there is people out there. If I connect you with Samantha Glass, she knows a skip tracer where they tried to pull up their information by, I believe, their driver's license. So if you can find their current address, you can serve them, bring them to the Landlord and Tenant Board and get the judgment in order to get them on damages. And then you can take that that order for damages and affect their credit report.
Great, wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll do that.
No problem. And then what I'll do too, guys, don't ring my phone completely off the hook, but you can also text me. I'm putting my phone number here in the chat. So if you have any questions, I'll be able to help you guys out.
I guess one more question. This is the last one, and you can share your advice to the newbie landlords. There's a question on the chat. What property software you can recommend for over 300 doors?
Even for rental gauge is going to be a good one for us to really tie in your N4 applications into it, your rent reminders, your N1 applications, making sure that you're giving that proper 90 days notice for the rent increases. And it's keeping everything organized and everything is ready for your tax accountant as well. So you're able to put your expenses into it. So definitely give it a whirl. I believe they have a free trial as well. And Sean used to be one of the presidents to the Kingston Landlords Association. So he is very clear of what the landlords are really needing in our industry when it comes down to property software. And he's also a property manager.
Okay. So last, just give us, your last advice, and for the new ones and for the ones that are still planning to become a landlord. What's the advice that you can give us?
Build your network. Build your network. You're going to have to build your other landlords who have more experience than you or less experience than you. You're going to have your paralegal ready to go, get to interview them so that you know who to call if you do need to get your paralegal. Read the Residential Tenancies Act and Landlord and Tenant Board inside out, because this is how you're going to be able to maneuver how you approach your type of tenant, and making sure you do all your tenant screening process. Make sure that you're checking. Do not skip that credit check process. Make sure that you're informing the rent reporting, the debt reporting. We're going to run it like a business, because without having the proper process in place, this is where things could go sideways. And you want to make sure that you put a really good taste in your mouth about real estate. It's a really good, this is how we've been able to earn our livings through real estate. And I want to do whatever I can to help landlords protect their investment, to keep them in this industry as long as we possibly can. And I'm always here if you guys have any of those crazy situations that you're going to go through, and every situation is going to be different. Sometimes it's going to be just about how we talk to our tenants in a very polite and friendly way, and keeping that friendliness open. That's what we always talk to our landlords about, giving a little gift when they move in. It's hard for them to now get mad at you after you give them a gift.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you again for your time, and if you've given us all the information, we're gonna put that in our group, and hopefully in your upcoming event, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be a massive successful event. So hopefully the rest of us can join. We'll probably ask more information about the event, and then we can put that in our Facebook group and see if we can, join those events. So again, Kayla, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Don't
Kayla.
forget to send me your group event so I can tell people about you. People got to find out about you too.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, thanks.
definitely. Thanks, Kayla.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
honey.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone. And I give all my information in the chat there. So if you guys need to get a hold of me, you know where to find me.
All right, thank you.
Bye for now. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
And for everyone who wants to stay for, just an open discussion, I'm still free.
Are you done?
Yes.
Come on, Crystal, speak up.
Yeah, speak up. Ay, patay tayo sa English natin.